Well, hello. It's very nice to see everybody who's here in the chambers with us this evening. And what I would like to do is officially call this Committee of the Whole of the Kalamazoo City Commission to order for Monday, July 15th, 2024. And our first order of business is roll call. Clerk Borling.
Commissioner Cooney.
Present.
Commissioner Decker.
Present.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Present.
Commissioner Pradle.
Present.
Commissioner Wilson.
Present.
Vice Mayor Hess.
Present.
Mayor Anderson.
Here. Thank you so much, Clerk Borling. Our next normal order of business is communications, but just before I jump to that, we have a special guests actually here with us this evening, and I would like to recognize Cheng Kid Sun, who is a former Western Student Body President, now works for governmental relations, and he's brought his folks here, his parents. Please stand. Thank you. Yes. I believe that you have graduated and you're now working in governmental relations at Western, correct? All right. Thank you so much. Happy to have you staying in town here, and very happy to have you visit us this evening. Thank you. Next on our agenda is communications.
Nothing this evening, Your Honor.
All right. Now is an opportunity for public comments. Just as a reminder for the Committee of the Whole meeting, public comment period is 2 minutes. If you have a comment you would like to provide to the Commission, please come forward, state your name and where you live in the city. See no one at this time. Okay, just a reminder, there will also be a public comment period at our business meeting, which starts at 7, which you can take advantage of that as well. Now is fine.
So I'm Matt Williams, and I actually don't live in the city. I live in Asheville Township. But there's a parcel of land, I think it's called 4728 West Kalamazoo Avenue, owned by the city on the corner of Kale and Drake. And I just really like it. I like that it's like a wooded park area. And I was thinking that maybe they could put a couple benches on the south-facing side of Kale Avenue or something. It's about 400 yards from where I live. It's just a nice part of the neighborhood, and I thought I'd like to see it conserved. And I know it's somebody's job and somebody's responsibility, but I just wanted to make a suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay.
If you want to leave your contact information, you could sign in right there at the dais, and the clerk will have that information and get back in touch with you. Anyone else that wants to take advantage of the public comment period for the Committee of the Whole? Okay, thank you so much. At this point, like I said, there's a reminder, our business meeting starts at 7. There will be an opportunity for public comments then as well, and that is a 3-minute public comment period. We're now down to the agenda for our work session. Manager Ritzma.
Well, thank you, Mayor. We have actually 2 topics this evening. And the first one, I'm going to ask our Neighborhood Business and Special Projects Coordinator, Jared Perdue, to come forward and introduce our guest, who will present a draft of our economic development strategy. Jared?
Mayor Anderson, Vice Mayor Hess, Commissioners. We're very excited to bring you the strategic framework of our economic development strategy. It's something that we've been working on since about December. And we've gone through a lot of data. We've interviewed countless stakeholders, and we're finally at a position to present our main goal areas and what we've learned so far. So I would like to introduce our guests, the consultants on this, Camorn Associates. We have Alex and Dan. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Commissioners.
officials, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here. We've been working on this strategic plan for several months, and so we're at a point where we can now begin to see what a framework for a strategy might look like and to get some of your early thoughts before this becomes more finalized in terms of definite strategies and recommendations. So we definitely appreciate this opportunity to be here this evening. First of all, my name is Dan Gunderson. I'm Senior Vice President with Camoin Associates, actually, we believe the nation's only full-service economic development consulting group. And with me is Alex Kramer. She is Director of Strategic Planning and has been the project manager thus far. So we're going to trade off responsibilities in terms of walking through some of what we've learned and pointing out areas where we could use some input. That's basically our agenda, is just two things. One, we want to communicate what this strategic plan is looking like, and then encourage your thoughts and comments, if not this evening, then in the next several weeks, so that when we come back to you soon, then we will be able to have a full plan that you have had the opportunity to contribute to. To set the context, thank you for playing a role in the selection of our firm. We conduct about 200 different projects a year all across the United States, and over our 25-year history, some couple thousand projects. And one thing is clear: there are no two communities that are alike. Each are unique, and therefore their strategies will be unique. And that certainly will be the case with the city of Kalamazoo and its economic development strategy, which incidentally I understand is the first economic development strategy that the city has had. So this is really important. If you believe that, yeah, isn't that interesting? That doesn't mean that there haven't been operational plans and priorities and strategic direction, of course, but in terms of a strategic plan that lays out sequentially activities over a period of time and looks at the economy and looks at how it all fits together, this is a first. Now, it is being done for a number of reasons, but one of them is to be able to apply to MEDC, the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, as a redevelopment-ready community. An economic development strategy is required. And MEDC does a good job of laying out what they expect to see in an economic development strategy. Fortunately, I can tell you, having done so many of these across the nation, what they lay out is best practice. It is the fundamentals of what should go into a strategy. So we will check all those boxes. But, and this gets back to the uniqueness of this city of Kalamazoo strategy, is that this strategy will begin and end, honor and build in the prosperity, the shared prosperity goals, and the Promise Kalamazoo, and all of the good efforts that have been going on for many years now to see a more equitable economic development framework occur. And there are a lot of definitions for what is equity. We could probably speak all night long on that. The International Economic Development Council has its own definition, first about economic development, that being to promote the well-being and improve the quality of life in communities by creating and retaining jobs, enhancing wealth, providing a stable tax base. But beyond that, really, it is achieved when every member of a community is able to share. There's that word shared that you have picked up on in the shared prosperity goals, to share in and benefit from the economic growth. So this has really become front and center in economic development nationwide and internationally. particularly since the pandemic, as it and the national and the international conversations about this. So fortunately, this plan will have that really as a centerpiece. I'm going to turn it over to Alex to talk to you about the great things that we've done and walk them through how this is being structured. Alex?
Thanks, Dan. Alex Tranmer here with Camoin Associates. So what we've got in front of you, we did just want to highlight all of the work that has gone into this process thus far. We set out intentionally to make sure that this was developed from the ground up, and so we've done that through a couple different ways. We have been working with the EDC, or the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. We've been working with them since the outset, so they have been vetting and having conversations with us for the last 6 months. In February, we kicked off with meetings with community and business leaders, so that set us off on the right path to help to identify some priorities and initiatives. Along the way, we've done interviews, had many conversations with staff. We've talked across philanthropic groups, business groups, nonprofits, many other workforce, education. We've talked across various leaders in the community that have helped us piece together all of this work. In May, we were here to do a public open house, so we engaged the wider public as well. We did that event at the library. We had a great turnout for that. We talked specifically about business vitality, quality of life, and then vision and leadership, understanding the perspectives, different perspectives of the city's current role in economic development and the lead and the role that it takes in supporting businesses. And that really did help drive, again, the priorities and understanding of some of the gaps that we might need to fill through this process. In addition to that, staff and Dan and myself have worked with the SPK organizing committee, and so they've been a part of these conversations as well. So it's just been really in lockstep throughout this process. Today, we are bringing you the framework, and from here, we'll go back to the EDC for their final approval before we bring it to you again in the fall. So we've had various layers of analysis, engagement, and certainly working with staff along the way to make sure that this is fully vetted strategy. So we had to take all of that work, everything that we heard to date, and turn that into a simple vision. We need to be able to go back to something concrete and say, along the way, we're going to have our strategy, but market forces are going to change, things are going to adapt. I hope there will not be another pandemic, but you just never know. So, we're working towards building a foundation that we can go back to when things do shift or do change. So, boiling down everything that we heard, the city of Kalamazoo is a thriving city for inclusive growth, attracting talent, catalyzing innovation, and fostering vibrant neighborhoods. It really picks up on all of the different components of economic development. Of course, we're talking investment, jobs, business growth, but we're really talking about overall quality of life represented in this vision here. A little bit more on what we heard through all of the feedback in terms of data and engagement and outreach. On your left-hand side there in the light blue are areas of strength. So through the different conversations, we heard a lot about the role that the city plays in aspects of community development. So things like placemaking, neighborhood advocacy, working with the neighborhood associations, the direct citizen engagement, and those different components of quality of life, the aspects that make you want to live, right, and celebrate Kalamazoo. Those were the areas of, certainly there's still room to grow and improve and work to do in those areas, but in terms of where the city can pull levers to affect change, those are the areas that we heard positives on. The areas on the right-hand side in that darker blue, the areas for improvement, really the foundational elements of economic development. So starting right at the top there with business retention and expansion, or BR&E, and business attraction, I'll say, right? Those are the foundational elements of economic development that that direct work with businesses to understand in real time what's happening with their employees, what's happening with their supply chains, what's happening with their foot traffic, understanding just the day-to-day. And there's certainly work that occurs in that area in Kalamazoo and across the region. But we kept going back to, on a daily basis, who has the resources and ability to do this every day, every morning, wake up and think about this just for the city itself, right? We're building the city's economic development plan. And so there's certainly work that's going on there, but to be able to say that this is a strong focus and we can be able to grow and support our businesses in this way, the BRNE, the business attraction, the being very targeted with this. There are certain industries that the city of Kalamazoo is able to grow and to really think about what those industries are, be strategic about it, and focus resources on there so that the rest of the economy can grow as well. Workforce development, we know the big investment is underway, and that is going to have some serious impacts on the region, and so that is certainly positive. And overall, just that business-friendly mindset, it's really something, again, that is a work in progress, and certainly something that we heard a lot about and some improvements about, and just an area to consider for improvement in the future. So when we talk about setting up this strategy and thinking about how we get to some of these areas for improvement and how we do that, we've set it up in a familiar way with our goals. Big ideas are the concepts. What are we generally trying to achieve? Our outcomes. What do we want to happen at the end of this? What can we expect to change or maybe evolve if we succeed? What are the exact strategies, policies, programs? How are we actually going to do this? And then the measures, the metrics. How are we going to track our progress and advancement of the things we put in place? So for the sake of time and laying out the framework, we are just going to focus on the goals and outcomes today. So I'll go through goals, and then Dan will take it over for outcomes. But generally, we've got our goals. You can think about these as essentially our pillars of the strategy, the big concepts that we know we need to impact through this process. So briefly here in front of you, starting on the left hand, we've got foster the business environment, target markets, and entrepreneurship. So those are the, again, foundational elements. We're going to support a thriving business climate, attract businesses in those key sectors, and nurture startups and small businesses. And so we're talking everything from entrepreneurship, the sole proprietor who's starting their business, to someone who is ready to hire 2 and 3 employees, or maybe they're ready to scale up and grow beyond that. We're talking the entire business life cycle here. And we're not just talking about financing and funding, we're talking about mentorship, alignment of the right resources, making sure that that is all really a holistic approach to business support. Strengthening neighborhoods, right? Our neighborhoods are where our employees live and work, where our businesses are, where our local businesses thrive and grow, we hope. So we're going to focus on improving the quality of life in neighborhoods, and that includes a business component as well. We're going to provide comprehensive support, infrastructure investments, and of course remain diligent with that community engagement and engage those in each of the neighborhoods and the surrounding neighborhoods as well. We're going to advance conditions for growth. The city really does have a transformative decade in front of it, I think it's safe to say, and to think about this opportunity to really look ahead and think about how we best take advantage and leverage those opportunities. So planning proactively for future growth. And then lastly, improve the downtown experience. This is work that we know is already going on and continuing on a day-to-day basis, really making sure that this is a priority. This is an entire city strategy, so we're not just focusing on neighborhoods, we're not just focusing on the downtown, we are focusing how they really work together. And so that's why we've got these 2 call-outs here for the neighborhoods and downtown. All right, so that is our goals, and Dan is going to talk a little bit about what we hope to achieve by addressing those goals.
Thanks, Alex. Are we moving at the right pace for you? Okay. All right. Alex just said that this is a plan for the entire city, and I think we have to keep in mind then that the plan is not just for capital city, meaning city staff, but small city, meaning all the people. And when we think of economic development in that way, we're thinking of a lot of partners who have to contribute to make it successful, the nonprofits and the business community and others. So this plan is going to address multiple audiences, and that's why we've reached out. And you can also see a second theme running through those 4 boxes that Alex highlighted there, is that this is a holistic plan. We take a very broad view, definition of economic development, not just business deals and projects and incentives, but the inputs to economic prosperity, from childcare to housing to human socials and human and social services, the wraparound services, looking at the totality of what makes for a healthy economy and a good quality of place. That is our philosophy, and that is where the economic development as a profession, which incidentally is less than 100 years old, believe it or not. But that's where the profession has moved, and it's about time. It lived in a banking and real estate world for about 2/3 of its existence, maybe 60 years, and we're well beyond that right now. But before I move on to outcomes, we wouldn't even have gotten to this point without the contributions of the staff, and we really need to recognize how helpful they have been. They've been engaged almost on a daily basis from the city manager's office. Thank you, and Mr. Manager, and the your staff, Rebecca, and that's been very helpful. Jeff, Jim, all of you, and then to the division staff, Antonio, Chelsea, PJ, Jared, Kevin. All of you have been engaged in this process. And what we've been talking about over the last couple weeks in some detail are the outcomes. Okay, now that we've heard everything we've heard, we've kind of looked at what the priorities might be and where the weaknesses lie. Well, what's going to happen if we go ahead and do this work? And we break it out by the 4 boxes again that Alex presented. In the business environment space, clearly we want to see more business formation and sustainability. Now, in any economy, businesses will be formed, but businesses will also go out of business, be lost. That is the nature of it. So you can you can build up all you want the fact that businesses are being created, but if you're not creating more than you're losing, then you're not creating the net new jobs that the economy needs. And that is a sustainability question. How do you sustain those businesses? Help them get to the next level. We will have recommendations in this report that will pull that out. Expanded base of targeted industries and growth of existing businesses. Camoin prides itself on being a data analytics firm, and so we will present a great deal of data. You, in your packets, received some of that data. If you have any questions on it, just shoot Alex or myself or Jared as the point of contact. Information, those questions, and we can dig into that for you. Diversified tax base, at the end of the day, that's what you want. You want to build that tax base. And one of the best ways to do that is by identifying the emerging sectors. Who's going to be in business 5 years from now? What does that look like? And how can we encourage these businesses to be in Kalamazoo? Enhancing the resources, mentorship, financial assistance of startups and small businesses. We will bring recommendations to the front and center on how other communities have done that and what is best practice. Here, there are a lot of providers in this space, And one of the things that we are focusing on is how well they coordinate their efforts together. How easy is it for somebody to find the help they need? And so we're evaluating what we call the small business ecosystem. And the report will provide some background on that. And then relaunch of business resources, looking at the processes, the expectations, how does it help the business community, all of the things that the city is presently doing, what more can be done to strengthen that. Advancing the conditions for growth, this is really talking about guiding the strategic development of the city, both physically, but also as partnerships. It's about the business climate. You know, some of this is improved transportation, zoning changes. How business friendly is it? How does it make sense to an investor? You know, using that word investor, this is really adopting the investor's perspective and not always the city's perspective on how we go about doing what we do, but how does that come across to those who are going to put their capital at risk? How is that interaction occurring? And so we will have some recommendations in that category. Proactive property acquisition to gain site control so that you can determine what the look of the city is all about. In our conversations with Rebecca and team, it's clear there are a lot of developable parcels. Yes, it's a landlocked city, but there are a lot of developable parcels, many of them in the downtown area. How is the planning done in such a way that you can attract the emerging sectors that we will target? How does that get done in a way that respects the goals, the longer-term goals of the city, and not just in a first come or haphazard kind of a way? And in doing so, avoiding the displacement and making sure that we're staying true to the principles of shared prosperity. Strengthening neighborhoods, increased connectivity between the SBKs, better coordination with neighborhood associations, sharing what is being learned within the neighborhoods. That's all part of this process. Development of multifamily housing, clearly, this is housing of all kinds, really, is absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. It's a national crisis. Every city is facing it, and it has become the #1 priority for economic development organizations nationwide. This strategy must address that issue. It won't be a full-blown housing strategy, no, but it will talk about the importance of investing in different kinds of housing and encouraging a process so that it makes it easier to bring these new homes and renovated properties online quickly. The continuation of infrastructure improvements, particularly with the event center coming online and then the changes that are occurring right now. This is going to be very important. We will stress that in the plan. And then finally, improving the downtown experience. The attraction and growth of diverse retail and entertainment, and again, the alignment with the SBKs and how they might benefit from that. Continuing to add product, housing product, so that the employers that we're expecting to attract will have places for their employees. The cultural and family-friendly activities, very critical, not only for city residents, but for regional residents as well, to have more of a reason to come and visit and enjoy all that the city has to offer. And then finally, this active land assembly. So these are some of the areas in which you can expect to see recommendations. How does it get done? This is the unanswered question as of yet. We have a lot of thoughts, but we don't want to get ahead of ourselves, and God forbid we get ahead of you. We need your input at this stage as well. But when we look at places where some of these recommendations are likely to be carried forward. You look at the city, and the city does many things very well, and has established processes and procedures which can always be improved, but they're already in place. The planning, the regulations, the zoning, the permits, this is all in your wheelhouse. The policy and the assistance, neighborhood development, facade improvement, community-based development, all of those things clearly are municipal functions, and we want to be able to point out in this plan the links between the recommendations and how the city can tie into those recommendations and help advance them. At the very least, this would call for an economic development ecosystem kind of coordinator, or somebody who's on top of the network of all the providers inside the city, municipal structures, and outside, so that the city is seen as a champion in this process. There are so many stakeholders. We've talked to quite a few of them. But these stakeholders in our report will include an action map, an action strategy, and we'll tie the recommendations to different point organizations. And many of them will be outside the reach of the city, but very much partners, stakeholders. And you see some of them listed here. This is what they do. They do it well. But they need to be part of an overarching strategy so that it produces the most impact. Now, there are gaps. You can call them weaknesses if we want to get a little bit more excitable, but there are gaps here in delivery. A lot of that has to do with physical development. You know the history of the downtown organizations and the abilities now. The city is doing what it can, but there's a lot more that is going to be needed in this physical development. And I would venture to say in the city placemaking, as the SBKs focus on how to make changes happen in their neighborhoods. Do they have the resources? Do they have the expertise to help them and guide them? How is that all being coordinated? The city staff right now in the division, Antonia's division, is doing a Herculean effort to help coordinate all this, but there's far more that needs to be done. It's really on this right-hand side, however, that there is a very big gap, and this is traditional meat and potatoes economic development that cities across the nation are addressing. But the city of Kalamazoo has, over time, has gravitated away from some of these activities. So we need to figure this out. Whether the city is the proper place or whether it is a public-private partnership, how it gets attended is going to be critical, but it needs to. There needs to be a messaging for the city, not just for the region, but for the city, and somebody championing the economic cause for the city full-time. And reaching out to investors. Southwest Michigan First is a great partner in this, but keep in mind that is a very large region, and in many of those municipalities they have these kinds of champions, and what we're calling for is a stronger economic development voice in this process. Identifying sites, building, marketing, working with Southwest Michigan First on this. BRE is critical, and Southwest Michigan First, thank you, is doing some of that right now, but there's much more that can be done for the small business community and employers that are not in the industrial or the commercial space. There's more of an initiative in concert with Southwest Michigan First and other providers, workforce and the state and others, all coming and putting business retention front and center and expansion. And same with business attraction. Research, we can always value from updated research. We need that. We need it on a continuous basis. And, of course, talent attraction. Working with our universities, working with our employers, and making sure that this is something that is being addressed on an ongoing basis. So, Alex, why don't you come back and join me as we wrap this up and then take your questions. Clearly, we need to track performance. The action plan that I noted earlier will have short-term, medium-term, and long-term goals. We will provide you with what some metrics might be in with each recommendation so that it can be tracked. This is management, control, and accountability, absolutely imperative. The last thing you want is a strategy that is just all words and doesn't give you that kind of accountability you're not getting. You're going to get the accountability. And we would hope that these metrics would be reported out on an ongoing basis and that it would influence. One of the things that we've learned that a recommendation may not be resilient. We talk about resiliency. Well, if our recommendations are too stiff, too firm, they are not flexible, they haven't anticipated something in the future, then it could all be for naught. It could be, a 5-year plan, but half the recommendations may be of no use 3 years from now. So our recommendations will be in such a way that the measures will be as flexible and anticipate as many things as we can. Obviously, not everything. And why are we doing this? So that you make better decisions, can make better decisions about the future of community and economic development. Jared's the point person, so we'll take the friendly fire. If you have any things that are a little bit more pointed, I'm sure Jared will stand up, or Antonio, or PJ. They're all ready and willing as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Commissioners, questions at this time? Commissioner Decker.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for that presentation. Great information. I was reading through it last night. Some of the questions you answered that I had, especially the one when you talk about having an ecosystem network connector here within the city, specifically for bringing in economic growth and individuals and businesses here, and also working alongside Southwest Michigan First. Mm-hmm. And there's a few points in here when you talk about the infrastructure. And I don't know if this is a question for you or Director Mitchell or Jared, but what can you talk about, or what can you say about getting updated infrastructure as we desire to bring in new businesses and organizations and industries into the city of Kalamazoo? How important is that, and how often do businesses look at that when they're looking to come to a city?
How often do businesses, I'm sorry?
How often do businesses, or how much do businesses look at the infrastructure when they are looking to come into a city and set up shop?
Yeah, I'll begin and then I'll have Alex round it off. Infrastructure is critical. It always has been for economic development, from the beginning of canals and plank roads to railroads and airplanes. It's so critical. The water and the sewer, the road infrastructure, the ease of access, broadband. You can go on and on as to what constitutes infrastructure, but it is one critical economic development fundamental. I would argue that just as importantly, it's important. And they're all equal in many respects these days. But if it's infrastructure on the one hand, intellectual capital, the talent, your K through 12 system, your universities, that's important. The international engagement, are you engaged? Do you have a market-based economy that's exporting product outside of your city, but also around the world? Are you attracting investment? These things, interest, tourism, viability of the city, that's important as well. These, what I call the 6 I's of economic development. But infrastructure, that's always been the first, not the most important, but the first fundamental for being able to attract the businesses they need to move their product easily, to have their employees have easy access and mobility around the city. And now the communications infrastructure is the most important. Yeah.
Thank you. And then on a few more points that you had made, I was kind of reviewing the survey that was actually put out within the open house activities. And when you talk about enhanced resources and mentorships and things like that, can you tell me, what do you think would be something that you would want to put into place? From what I read with some of those, it's like it's very difficult to find the information, or it's not in a one-stop shop. And I know you said, Director Mitchell, they're trying to, be Hercules over there, and sometimes they may need a little bit more assistance. But what would your thought be on that?
Great question, and a question that a lot of places do in different ways with a lot of these things. There's no, quote unquote, right or wrong way. It's whatever works best for the community. I think as part of this moving forward, it's got to be a solution that works for, again, not just the city, but the partners with the city as well. So whether that's it's going to be a multi-pronged approach, but I think the digital outreach around it has to be a sustained and ongoing campaign. I think the awareness of not just the resources that exist, because those are going to continue to adapt and change as there's different funding sources, but the entity that is the, we say the front door for the businesses, just where do they go? And so all of the 26 partners or something we had in the room on the first day, the consensus of who that is among those partners, and having that ongoing conversation, and the just awareness of who has what, and making that widely available digitally at key points throughout the city. So digital, great, but we want it in spaces that we know people are going to gather, whether that's libraries, churches, schools, all of those places. Digital is the focus these days, but I do think having those community partners on the ground that interact day to day, whether it's with businesses or residents, I think having them promote and market the message is going to be huge as well. So it's certainly not an easy answer or one answer, but I think the messaging around where the front door is, just where do you go, and then the sustained marketing and promoting around that is going to go a long way.
Thank you. And a lot of things are going digital, so if my colleagues here know I love things in paper.
I do too.
So always having something that is a hard copy is also very good. One thing that you did mention was, talk about the talent that we have here. So what kind of conversations have you had when we talk about uplifting our talent? What organizations? Have we met with the Kalamazoo Literacy Council, for example? Have we met with individuals from the Kalamazoo Promise? Have we met with individuals at some of our colleges that we have here? The school board. What do those conversations look like?
So we did meet with representative from the Promise, and then from Carrie Risa, and several of the educational institutions as well. And so really understanding, what they're seeing on the ground, and right there having conversations day to day and how they work together. I think in terms of, it's a competitive field, right, to attract that talent and to grow from within. I think there's a lot of work going on with the Workforce Development Center, and the ability to anticipate what future jobs are going to, the skills, the training that they're going to need, right? That is 10 steps ahead, and that is a huge asset for the region. And so, right, starting in the K through 12 system, right, that sort of outreach and education and all of those conversations start at that level. And so you've really got this broad spectrum of education and having those conversations in terms of attracting and keeping the talent here, right, that goes back to things like housing and quality of life and awareness of jobs. I think there was some perception of unawareness of some of the opportunities that are right in the city. There are open jobs now that, right, are just, for whatever reason, people don't know about. So I think building the awareness of what currently exists too was part of the conversations that we had with those educational leaders.
I might add that in our very first workshop, our very first meeting and visit here, we met with multiple stakeholders that the city helped bring together. Jared, how many were there in that meeting? Jill, I think your colleague was there. 30 or so. And I would venture to say almost every question you've asked, they were addressing many of those issues in that very first session. And you can appreciate we do this so often all around. And I say that no two communities are the same, except in one respect, and that is every community has areas where nobody's really taken responsibility. And so when in our very first session, it's an interesting exercise. We said, what are the key challenges? What are the big things that we need to address? Okay, is this doable? Who's doing it? If it's not, why not? Is it orphaned? Why is it orphaned? Well, it's not in my mission. Well, I thought you were doing it. And you'd just be amazed at how many things get parked there. And then, oh, well, is this a systemic issue? And so we started looking at those things that were systemic. And as we began talking about all these issues, you find that they all gravitate toward the center. They don't land in any one area. And that proves the point that it's the collective will that everybody needs to be working on these issues. But communication, knowing how to access it, knowing who's doing what, can't be understated. That has to be so critical. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, last question, I promise. So again, within some of the presentation that I was looking at online, you talked about that we haven't had in the area a very large retail development since 2014, and that would have been the Costco over there in the Drake area. With the conversations that you said you had with our brownfield team over there, how important do you feel that it is to make sure that we are being proactive in making sure our brownfields are being cleaned up, to make sure that we can then use some of this vacant land that has been tainted for so long to bring new industries in that will not taint our land?
Yeah. Well, I mean, these are legacy costs, obviously, because of the history and how the city was developed. And you are landlocked, and these sites continue, in some cases, I believe, to have negative environmental impact. They need to be addressed. So I want to let up the focus on brownfields, but it can't be to the exclusion of basic economic development and what we can do to develop the economic base. So it's, I hope that this doesn't result in well, now we have to give up our focus on this because we have to shift gears. No, this is a yes and, not a but.
I might just add, well, yes, that could be a full-time job or 6 full-time jobs. That when we think about where there are nodes of development and nodes of opportunity and identifying, we've got 3 in this quadrant that we know, could be unlocked for opportunity if, we took X, Y, and Z action. So I think through this sort of prioritization exercise, that's the direction to sort of focus on that. If we can unlock the opportunity in those areas that have the most potential, then we can start to work down the list.
Thank you. Yeah, that's kind of what I was getting at. As long as we've got that, they've been doing a great job. But if we can, whatever we can do, and whatever funds that we can get to help remediate those lands, again, like you said, we are landlocked. It just opens up more space for us to be able to do things. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Decker. Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you all for this information. I was wondering if you could say a little bit about what are those targeted industries and businesses that you will be paying more attention to than some of the others? What are some of those sectors looking like?
You want to take it?
Yeah, I'll start. So by targeted industries too, we mean, I guess not to the exclusion of other industries too, I want to make sure, but these tend to be the data and just the existing business mix shows that there's strengths in the area, and that if we can support and target resources there, that other aspects of the economy will tend to grow, because we're creating jobs, we're attracting people, and other aspects of the economy will grow. So some of the areas that would be a good fit in terms of targets, and these would align with some regional targets as well. Certainly pharmaceutical and medical device manufacturing. I guess I would say manufacturing in general, right? There's a legacy here, of course, of manufacturing. Manufacturing even 20 years ago, it looks different today. It's going to look different in 20 years. So, we're obviously not talking big smokestacks and things like that, but we're talking those precision manufacturing that's creating tiny, tiny things and going into larger devices, more high-tech, technology-based production processes. We're talking about sort of the professional and scientific jobs, so maybe research-based, along with healthcare as well is certainly a strength here. The surrounding businesses that would support, of course, a larger healthcare system. That might even include life sciences and sort of the more technical aspect of healthcare as well. Arts and culture, entertainment, retail, right? I would say that those are certainly a foundation and strength for the city too, and certainly have their own set of support services and resources as well. So those are a few that have popped up for us.
Thank you for that. Also, I'm very happy to see you all talk about shared prosperity. I personally would like to see our staff and you all push a little bit more in reference to, economic development is great, but if we don't have people, what are we doing? So I really would like to see a stronger emphasis put on our shared prosperity and what we're really trying to do with that. Sometimes it gets lost for me in these development strategies. So I just always want to state that without the people and community, none of this would be doable. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Commissioner Hoffman. Other questions? Yes, Commissioner Cooney.
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Jim, for doing this, and staff. Really appreciate Kevin and everybody else that was involved, Antonio and everybody. I really like the thrust that economic development is not measuring the wealth of the community, but does everybody, we measure by does everyone have access to the resources they need to lead a fully human life? I mean, that's what I'm hearing here. And I think that's great. We got a bunch of statistics to look at before this, and I really appreciated that. But a couple things that struck me in those things, and they weren't all new to me, but it struck me again. When we look at people having access to the resources they need, when we look at the ALICE measures, we have 46% of our families in the city that can't meet their monthly bills. And when we look at the Black community, it's almost 60%. So if we're going to be talking about economic development, we got to focus on that, right? We really got to focus on that. Second thing is, you talked about intellectual capital, how important that is. But when we look at high school graduation rates and people who had some college, we're worse than the rest of the state. We're lower than the state average, even though we got this wonderful promise. And we have people who are knocking themselves out to help kids get to that promise, but we're not there. So those kind of things really struck me. And two areas that I really would like to look at. One is living wages. People that are working, but they're not making enough to meet their basic needs. And secondly, collective response. We have so many resources in this community, but we don't seem to focus. We don't seem to have these things all going in the same way. So those things strike me. And then you talked about all the experience you have working in all these different communities. I would be interested in best practices of cities that you found who have really been able to reduce poverty. And I'd like to see what they've done. So there are just some thoughts I had.
Okay, let's consider some case studies.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Thanks, Commissioner Cooney. Vice Mayor Hess, did you have questions?
Sure. Hi. Again, thank you for being here. At the beginning, you talked about that Kalamazoo is unique. And I'm sure you've laid out some things, but in a nutshell, can you talk to us about how you see Kalamazoo being unique and different from other cities that you're working with?
Oh, I'd love to swing at this one.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Step up to the plate, Dan.
No. One of the, and we've had long conversations about this with the staff. In a lot, in almost every other community we go to, we are the ones who, in developing an economic development strategy, are the ones that are saying, please consider the community development aspect in an economic development strategy. Please understand the social ramifications and this, what we call integral economic development. It is so important. And we can make strides in some places and we move the needle maybe a little bit. What is unique here is that you've got that down. That focus it's a laser focus. You've got it almost to the extent that you have a blinder to some of the more traditional economic development that we were talking about. We need to reintegrate that. But I can only think of one other community, but you're far more community focused than it. And it's one that I'm actually doing at the same time now as this, and that's Ithaca, New York. That has almost a similar kind of dynamic going on, and some of these, well, I don't know if I'd call them tensions, but realities and different ways of approaching the world from the business perspective, the investor's perspective, as I said, and the community-based. I think that is something this community can be very, very proud of, is that focus on its people. That is a marketable message that other economic development organizations aren't going to be able to project as credibly as you can.
Thank you for that. Next, Alex, and you've already touched on this a little bit with Commissioner Decker's questions, this idea of education in Kalamazoo. Mm-hmm. It's pervasive. It's everywhere. It's from from birth to death, really, educational opportunities. And how would education be brought forward in this plan as a connector between the institutions and our economic development? We attract thousands of students every year to come to Kalamazoo, and I believe that we do need a vibrant, healthy, thriving, business-centered downtown center in order to keep those students here in Kalamazoo. How do we keep and attract those students to this city?
I mean, yeah, that's got to be a central focus. And again, is a lot of places are trying to answer that very same question. A couple different things come to mind. I mean, housing, again, comes to mind. Right, as a student, you're sort of expected to live in, certain situations, and then you get out of school and realize, I might have some different opportunities here. So I think, right, housing is one piece. I did talk to a couple stakeholders actually who went to school here and ended up staying here. They've been here for many years now, so I got a kind of different perspective that wages was certainly brought up in that someone had reflected back on a previous job, maybe it was 5-10 years ago, and she looked at the current rate for that job now, and it was the same when she picked it up right out of school, whatever it is, 5-10 years ago, right? So those wages certainly not increasing at the level that cost of living is increasing, certainly presents a challenge. There's only so many levers that a city has to pull in terms of cost of housing and quality of life, but right, those are the things that we're talking about. What can the city do to impact that? But right, in terms of wages, the types of jobs that grow and are attracted here and that grow from within, that can help to advance some of those median average wages and make it competitive in the region. Those were a couple of things: the housing, the quality of life, the opportunities with existing employers. I know, right, apprenticeships, work-based learning is just continuing to grow and grow and grow. And if you have an internship and are experienced and you meet a coworker and, you build a life, right? You start to build a life. And so it might not be forever, but if it's the next 5 to 10 years, then you're more likely, usually to stay. So those were a couple of things that came up, and I think we can address and start to get at some of those topics in the strategy too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And I would hope that with all of the education around us, that the city is seen as an education center, that the city becomes the classroom. And one last thing. So tonight at our business meeting, I think we'll have a handful of business folks from Kalamazoo who are from downtown and from around construction areas who are struggling. And I just wonder if you know about that and if there's anything immediate that we can do to help those folks. Any thoughts? Do you know about this? And the struggling businesses because of construction and so on?
Is this the north side in particular?
Park Street Market, Victorian Bakery, but then also downtown businesses will be here.
I mean, we've certainly had those conversations, more recently, and right, have seen the construction and things. And with the investment and infrastructure funding that's come down, I understand, right, it's a reality. You've got to make investments. I have worked in other communities where they have had, I don't know exactly what they called it, but a construction mitigation fund, essentially, to support businesses. Right, that's, who knows, right, if that can ultimately, save or help that business. It's one option. But I do think if we know that construction is going to be a reality in a lot of different parts of the city right over the next decade, that a strong focus on that and getting ahead of those areas that maybe haven't seen quite that level of construction yet, starting to work on those strategies now is going to be important and take some lessons learned from what's happening now. I don't know if staff had anything to add on.
Antonio, I'm not getting your sign language there.
I was sign languaging the city manager, my boss. He's like, you want me to come up here? So, like Alex said, what we're going to be doing as staff is putting together a business engagement plan, similar to what we did during COVID. So this is not new. It's just the interesting thing here is we as the city did have a response during COVID. We were successful. So we understand the business is saying, hey, what are you going to do? Come on, do something. We know you can do something. And so we're going to be putting together a plan on how to engage the businesses. Our initiative is that everything is just getting started, but it's 10 years of just getting started. And so what we want to do is be able to focus on those construction zone areas and putting together plans to work with those businesses before construction starts. In this case, it was the areas of construction that kind of bottleneck certain areas. We keep talking to the community about trying to get the community to understand that we have like 3 streets that come into downtown that carries all the traffic, and we need to correct that. The problem is it's painful, which we're feeling right now of making that correction, that you have, like I said, 3 streets going into at 1.6 lanes of traffic through our downtown, carrying all our traffic through our downtown. We're making the adjustments so that, quote unquote, what we're feeling now doesn't happen in the future. But what we want to do is try to be better at engaging the businesses in where their space is right now and try to enhance their ability to be successful. With Grubhub and anything else we can think of to assist them with marketing their space and using e-commerce to solidify their business growth and development even during construction. But we have to work with the businesses, so we have to start meeting with them where they're at and pretty much not just throwing money at it, but having a real strategic plan on how to partner with them. And that is something we haven't done in the past. I think one key factor with my economic development team, they're 3 years old. This is a brand new component, as was stated by the consultants. Some of the things that we used to do, we stopped doing, and so we got to reboot them. We got to reboot meeting with businesses on a regular basis. We got to reboot talking to businesses on a daily and weekly basis that we stopped doing. There's a lot of things that my first go around, Commissioner Cooney was involved. We used to have the mayor and the commissioners tour manufacturing businesses and meet with companies downtown. We used to do a lot of stuff that, sorry to say, our economy pushed us out of doing. And so we're in a position to get back to that. And this strategy that you see in front of you is that first foundational component to solidify why we're going in this direction. We're not coming to staff saying, hey, we got a great idea. We brought in experts to put in front of you the great idea, and now we get to implement it. So hopefully us working more closely in those construction zones with those businesses and working with public services in that communication and putting together literally, sorry to say, a construction map for the public so they understand these are the projects not only this year, but that's going to happen next year. These are the timeline. I try to explain to people is in Michigan we have a season of construction. I just came from Charlotte. It's construction all year long there. We don't have that blessing. We tear it up as fast as we can and try to put it together before, as I call it, before school starts, which is always interesting that everything stops right when school starts. But that's our timeline. And this is not new to the city of construction. What's new is the congestion of, sorry to say, those main corridors that we have in downtown that are being cut off, that are our main vein to our central city portion. So sorry to say, that's why we started with them, to get them out the way so it can open up that gateway of traffic again, and then we can work on the side components as well. Yes.
All set, Vice Mayor Hess? Commissioner Pradle.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioner Decker, very nice to have you back. We missed you. A couple items I was just hoping to talk to you a little bit about, and this first one is I'm coming at it from more of a mom and pop shop type lens as well. But I was curious if through all your investigative work and findings that site plan review came up as a component or as an integral component. We are very blessed that we have a very interdisciplinary group of people that evaluate development projects before they come. But again, some just experiences of just some anecdotal things I've heard from people where I know we can grow and improve. There's one young developer under 30 years old, had to scrap 2 units from his small development because in the 2 years that it's been through the site plan review, interest rates have gone up, material costs have gone up. One of the things I think that we sometimes forget about, we talk about like the lasagna of financing and whatnot. One of the most valuable elements to people doing this work is time. And we forget that. And that has to be a critical component that we think about too, because the conditions today might not be the same conditions tomorrow. Another developer was actually a nonprofit, and in the time in the site plan review process, their project costs went up $400,000, right? And so what cost did that cost that nonprofit from work happening in the community or further growth or expansion or those sort of things? And so I was just kind of curious to get your perspective if that's something that you heard, or that's something that you're interested in, us addressing in the plan.
Absolutely, we've been hearing that, and that gets to the thoughts about business climate. Is it business friendly? We will have some recommendations in the report about this. I've used the phrase "the investor's perspective." You just articulated some of the reasons why that's important to be aware of it, to respect it, to understand it, and to work with it. And this is something that it's easy to lose sight of when your job is to do the job the same way for the same client day in and day out. This is going to come. This kind of change is going to come from the top leadership within the city. You and the division heads and city manager's office being able to say, we need to make sure that we're being prompt, accurate, complete in everything we do, and stress that first, but do the second, and be complete.
I know we've made a lot of improvements. I mean, it's remarkable even in a 5 to 10 year period how much has happened, probably more than decades even before that in a short amount of period, so I don't mean to diminish that. But I think it's definitely a gap to think about that's just definitely impacting people. And like I say, it's, when I talk to these individuals, the thing that's so interesting is that they love this community. They're sticking with it, even though they're facing all those hurdles because they love this place so much. And so that tells you about the positives, right, about this community is that, hey, they're gonna face all those headwinds because they believe in this place. But when we look at that high poverty rate, when we talk about like trying to look at Alice households and create that wealth, that is a barrier. Because the people who are getting into this space for the first time, they don't have the decades of experience, the money to back them to get through that process, and it's scary. And so I just wanted to make sure to lift that up. And one of the things, and I know I've shared this with the city manager, is I really think one of the solutions to this is a think tank of these people. Let's get these people in the room who are these small startup folks who are trying to invest in our community and ask them like, what could we do for you? So that would be one thing. And that kind of leads to the next thing as well, is that, you look at like the biggest companies in the world. And if you look at their like origin stories, like more often than not, it was like started on somebody's computer in somebody's garage in somebody's basement, right? And that is to me a huge opportunity to create that wealth creation for people that sometimes that we overlook, the home-based business, the e-business, the gig economy person who's just starting out in their house. But, like look at Dessert First over on Rose Street here. This is a company that's a prime example of that started out of a hobby in the home, then in an incubation space, but now has a brick and mortar space that's grown into that's going to hopefully develop and thrive here in the community. So I was curious about what your thoughts are in that as well.
I'll just hop in and say, we would tend to agree that entrepreneurship is a prime avenue for a pathway to success and generational wealth creation. And that's why those entrepreneurial resources that are in the city are so incredibly valuable, because they are building the foundation and offering the resources and not just resources, but leadership and mentorship in those spaces. So that is absolutely an area that I think can continue to grow and foster, and whether it's targeting certain cohorts or certain types of businesses, certain target industries, there's certainly opportunity to grow there. In terms of getting people just in the room and sharing ideas and things, this is a Dan story, but right, we're setting up this strategy and framework and all of these policies and strategies, but ultimately these business owners and creators, they just want to meet other people like them and learn from their peers. You know, they can problem solve, you know, faster than, right, they can make a call to City Hall. So getting the networking, getting them in front of the right leaders, the right mentorship, the right people who've already gone through the process, that's where that learning is going to come from, and they're going to, you know, the people that get into entrepreneurship, they're going to make their own path, they're going to figure it out, and they just need to be connected to the right people. So,
we have some stellar incubators too. I mean, like KNAC over here. I mean, Black Wall Street, the work they're doing is spectacular. Can Do Kalamazoo.
Yeah.
I mean, these are movers and shakers who want to get stuff done and who have big visions, and you know, I hope we resource them accordingly to help with that work as well. And then the last thing I was just going to bring up as well is that not too long ago we had a group of younger people and young adults who came in and were talking about e-scooters or, you know, bike rentals in the city. And I just think that's a great example. You know, more recently, I know this is something that Commissioner Wilson's been devoting a lot of attention to, but one of the greatest resources we have in this community are young people. You know, I have a 10-year-old, and I was just thinking about this the other day. When we finish all the work, the almost $90 million of infrastructure work that's going to happen, my 10-year-old is going to be graduating from high school. And so that tells you, like, how critical it is that we're listening to these people, these young people, because they are going to be the future of this community. And when we have opportunities like that, where you have young people who are enthused about, like, e-scooters, e-bikes, you know, things you see in every major big city in the country, let's jump on it and do it, you know? I would love to see us find ways to really, like, capture their enthusiasm and let them see when they come with us with ideas that we act on it and we do it. And so, you know, I don't know as well, you know, something as well as along those same lines of, like, the think tank for the site plan review process and whatnot. I would love to see that with young people, you know, high schoolers, college age folks, young people who maybe, you know, are looking for opportunity, and just wanted to get your thoughts on that as well.
Yeah, well, Commissioner, I think you're on to something very important, and I can't recite the exact figure in the data set, but what blew my mind was the difference of the median age for 28.5 median age for the city of Kalamazoo, but for the state of Michigan, it was in the 40s. Just think about that. What a differential. Well, that, use to your advantage. Cultivate those young minds. Make sure that they stay here. Engage them in the civic infrastructure. Have them be proud of the community in which they're living, and match them with mentors, and introduce them to the workplace and to the employer. Have the employers be part of this process. Get to them early. But yeah, very important. But I also think it's probably one of those underlying assets that can really become critical to the future of economic success of the city.
And we got to be cognizant of ourselves too. I mean, you think about it up here, the two youngest people on commission, not to date ourselves, are the two of us, and we're in our mid to upper 30s. And you just gave what the more typical age. I mean, yeah, I was going to say we're old, you know, but I mean, I think the really cool thing is that that we also, in more recent development on our commission, is that we have 3 commissioners that have young families, you know, and that's not always been the case, right? And so capturing those voices and making sure that the voices that aren't necessarily up here are captured, I think is just going to be critically important.
Good.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wilson.
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you for the presentation. Echoing what my fellow commissioners Hoffman and Cooney said, it's refreshing to see some SPK emphasis being placed on some of these strategies that you guys are exploring. I did have a question. I was curious to know To what degree do some of our local, state, and federal goals to combat climate change, what are some of those, and to what extent do those goals play into some of the strategies that we explore for economic development here in the city, if any?
Saving the best for last, huh? Climate change, no small problem. Let's solve that in this plan. Seriously, I think, I mean, this becomes a question of resiliency and the impact to the community. Our plan will not be able to do that justice. We have so many issues that we're addressing here. One way in which we might be able to draw it out a little bit is to focus on some of those emerging industries that are addressing some of these issues, and trying to make sure that some of that is occurring here in the city. Clean technologies, a budding field all around. What's happening, and how can we engage Western Michigan University and Kalamazoo College and others in trying to encourage their students to it's not a hard sell to encourage the students in this area, but maybe there are business opportunities and entrepreneurial ventures that can be started up, and we can develop an emerging cluster. That would be ideal, and I think that's within the purview of this economic development strategy to encourage that.
I might just add infrastructure as well, right? Because we've talked about being proactive for growth, and we've already talked about the construction that we know is going to happen. So if a road's being torn up and utilities are being, we know that's happening, how can we rebuild this in a way that we know is going to prepare us for the future? So making sure that that is either encouraged or mandated, however far you would like to go. But I think that's a prime opportunity to look at some of those investments. If we know that construction is going to occur, we would like to rebuild in a way that is going to be resilient to our communities.
Thank you. I wasn't trying to put you on the spot there, but as we explore some of the businesses that we bring into the city, like manufacturing, you mentioned not having big smokestacks and limiting the carbon emissions there. Commissioner Prater mentioned a good solution for the e-scooters. I think that'll also be good for working towards those climate change goals. But yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I also wanted to add, we work closely with our sustainability coordinator, Justin Gish, with the Inflation Reduction Act, looking at how that may help small businesses with HVAC equipment, to rooftop solar, to switching out gas stove to induction. We're getting into some of those details of what that might look like and digging into what that bill has. So another aspect we're looking into.
Thanks, Chair.
Any other questions, commissioners? All right, a lot of feedback here. So just a couple things from me in that, I guess that is this. I'm really looking forward to a more detailed report with some specificity in it, and I'm sure that that's where we're headed here for September, because obviously we can kind of talk in a somewhat distanced way about the principles of economic development and that sort of thing, but for any community, it's where the rubber hits the road, and what competitive advantages may exist here. And some I think are obvious for the city of Kalamazoo. I mean, a city this size that has the amount of higher education resources here, a city this size that has really large international businesses that have started here and are still show some commitment to their roots here in town, makes a big difference. And even our local medical provider institutions, which are located here. I guess for me, I've just got a couple thoughts about this. And when we talk about areas for improvement, it primarily looks to me like more focus on economic development specifically, and which then turns into, is there a staff person or more that actually does that work and gets up every day and thinks about that in a broader sense? I know we've been doing a lot of kind of a community-based kind of a thing, so I don't know what the result of that recommendation will be. But also the fact that much of economic development, I mean, let's be honest about it, is not going to be driven in the halls of the bureaucracy at the city of Kalamazoo. I mean, it wasn't like we decided, for example, to put out an RFP for someone to build an event center here. Event center is happening in Kalamazoo, and we didn't, create that incentive to do that. So none of this is going to happen without active working with your partners who are actively participating in the competitive economy every single day here and looking for how the city can help with that. Obviously, having good jobs here and access to good jobs, that's what's going to make a difference in terms of people's basic income, that kind of business. But, it seems to me that we are just going to continue to be one part, and maybe even a somewhat smallish part of this whole big partnership, and maybe some of the things that we can do and should do, is make sure back on the community development side, are streets in good shape? Do we have good water and wastewater treatment? Do we have safe neighborhoods? Those kinds of things that are more in the category of city work. So I'll be interested to see how all that plays out when we pull it together. And also, when you're in one place and you're not doing the comparisons all the time, it's very interesting to say, here's how you rank against your peers. Here is what other folks are doing in the country. Here's who's crushing it, and this is what they did to do that. Understanding there's still some serendipity and who knows what else that comes into play there. But so I'm looking forward to moving from what seems, kind of a conversation that it's a bit amorphous to some conversation that really kind of lays out some very particular things we can do, to keep this really moving forward. So thank you for all that. I appreciate it. And Dan and Alex, I guess we're going to see you back here. Is that right? In
You will.
a few months? Okay.
You will.
Super.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
So, Manager Risman, I know we have something else on our agenda, but I don't know if we have time for it tonight.
Well, I was just going to say that. Do you really want to talk about snow clearing in July? But we do have an agenda item coming up on the August 12th, because the next time we meet is August the 12th. It will be a first reading of a ordinance change to our snow clearing. So we have a presentation. We can move that to the cow of that day, and just understand that it'll be on the agenda for first reading. So we do not have to cover that this evening.
Is everybody okay with that? I don't know if you have a sense of how long, but I wouldn't.
It'd be about 15, 20 minutes. So it'd be.
How about we do it when is that everybody okay with that? We'll take it off the agenda for tonight. If there's a huge disappointment here, that we're not talking about snow removal right now, I guess we can change. But otherwise, then we'll do that.
Okay.
Anything else, Manager Risman?
That's all we have.
All right. Thank you. Now is an opportunity for commissioner comments for the Committee of the Whole meeting. Once again, a reminder that there will be an opportunity for commissioner comments at our business meeting that starts at 7. Any commissioner comments for the good of the order here? All right, good. Well, that gives us an opportunity to have about a half-hour break. We'll be back here at 7. So great to spend some time talking about this important topic. We are adjourned.